Who are you?
I beg your pardon?
Who are you?
Who are you?
I am Nardwuar The Human Serviette, and you are?
You're the Human Serviette?
Nardwuar The Human Serviette.
Well, that's rather gross. What does that mean?
Just like, napkin, wiping things up with it. But you are, most importantly, you are?
I am a guy.
You are Geddy Lee.
Yes.
Geddy, you are God. I must say that. You are God. You are Geddy Lee. You are God.
Well, that's an unusual way to describe me.
Geddy, at one time, did Rush once open for the New York Dolls at the old New Yorker Theatre in Toronto?
We opened for the New York Dolls at the Victory Burlesque Theatre in Toronto.
So how glam were you back then?
How glam?
Yeah, how glam were you back then?
I think we were going through a transition of being slightly glam in a bar band sense, because at that stage we were still pretty much a bar band. And, transitioning from that to kind of a more rock band.
Because you looked very effeminate at that time. I have this wall towel of you guys where you're all wearing like silk kimonos.
Yeah, we used to. We used to wear silks and satins and ridiculous platform shoes and sequin tops and things like that.
Was there any particular shampoo that you used at all, Geddy?
Well, that's a rather dumb question.
Well, just curious, to bring out that special Rush look in the early days.
Yeah, well, I can see this interview is going into a very boring direction for me.
Well, Geddy, first off, you started your own label, Anthem, because no one else would get behind Rush. You guys are like the prototype for the original Canadian DIY punk band.
We were, I beg your pardon?
Like you guys started Anthem, your label, because no one else would get behind you guys. You're like the original Canadian DIY band, do-it-yourself band.
Yeah, well, I guess so.
No, I also heard, Geddy, that you like baseball.
Yes.
Mike Piazza of the Mets, like Slayer. Do you hang around any baseball players at all?
Well, I have some friends that are baseball players.
Did you ever hang around Dave Winfield at all?
No, I met him one time.
What did you think when he killed that pigeon a few years ago? You being a big Blue Jays fan, I imagine.
Well, I think it was kind of a unusual circumstance, to say the least.
So, Geddy, didn't you hang around Vitas Gerulaitis a little while back?
Yeah, he was a friend of mine for a while.
And Vitas Gerulaitis hung around John McEnroe, who hung around the Dead Boys. Did you ever see the Dead Boys at all in the early days of Rush?
No.
Didn't the Ramones open for Rush at one time?
No.
Rush, little-known pretenders to punk rock's raunchy throne, stormed on stage at the Summit Arena in Houston and received the ear-splitting roar usually reserved for such legendary hard rock bands as Led Zeppelin and Grand Funk Railroad. Maclean's Magazine, 1977. Rush, little-known pretenders to punk rock's raunchy throne.
That's pretty odd.
That was Maclean's Magazine.
I know. Well, I guess to Maclean's Magazine we must have seemed like punk, which doesn't say much for what Maclean's Magazine knows about music.
Geddy, how come you guys didn't ever do a full-on punk album? A lot of my friends were wondering that, because that would have been a Rush punk album.
It's because we weren't a punk band.
But you had some punk-associated type things with you. For instance, like, didn't Gerald Cassell from Devo do some of your videos?
Yeah, but he wasn't a punk.
And you wore a Devo pin as well.
Yeah, but they weren't punk.
But you had that kind of feel, though. Like, you wore skinny ties, and you seemed to be kind of inspired by New Wave. Like, were you into Gary Newman at all?
No.
What about Digital Man and Spirit of the Radio having reggae parts? Would you say there was any punk feel there at all? Like, why didn't you do a punk?
I don't know why you associate reggae ska with punk.
Well, it was the whole new wave.
It's a completely different genre of music.
Well, a lot of the punk bands use that. Like, the Clash did reggae. Even DOA from Vancouver broke into some reggae as well. And I just kind of saw that Police influence in those songs at all.
Yeah, well, Police were a pop band, not a punk band.
So do you take offense to the word punk at all then, Geddy?
No, I don't take offense to it at all. There were some punk bands that I liked, but I don't really see how you associate it with our music.
Well, I just seen that you guys have that punk feel because you had the Melvins open for you guys. Do you think the Melvins were the best band to ever open for Rush at all, Geddy?
No. I think Melvins were a pretty interesting band. Unfortunately, they didn't really fare very well in front of our audience.
What happened?
Well, they weren't very well thought of.
How about the other bands you've had? Like, you had that band Rabbit. Remember them? WRABBIT?
I can barely remember them.
Or Chalk Circle. Didn't the Melvins do as well as Chalk Circle?
No, actually, Chalk Circle did better.
Now, Geddy, what are you guys listening to right now, besides your live album, Different Stages, that's right out right now? What are you listening to right now?
I'm listening to Bjork a lot. I'm listening to some bass and drums collections from Ninja Tunes.
Are you a big Sloan fan at all? Because didn't you have like Twice Removed from the Canadian band Sloan in your car stereo a little while back?
Didn't I have what?
Sloan, the band Sloan. Are you a big Sloan fan at all, Geddy Lee?
Not particularly. I've heard a few of their pieces. Some of the stuff is interesting to me, some of it's not.
Because they have that song, She Says What She Means, that has a very, very similar bass line to Spirit of the Radio. It's their new song, She Says What She Means. I was just curious if you had heard that at all.
No, I haven't.
Have you heard that Mixmaster Mike from the Beastie Boys used Tom Sawyer as the show opener to the Beastie Boys' Canadian dates?
Yeah, I heard that.
And what did you feel about that?
Well, that was kind of cool.
Geddy, do you feel guilty at all about the thousands of teenage boys who ended up with blisters on their thumbs trying to be a cool rock bassist like yourself?
Yeah, I feel real guilty about it.
Have you ever talked to Lemmy from Motorhead about basses? He has like a customized Rickenbacker bass, and yours is stock.
Well, it's been many years since I've talked to Lemmy, and I remember at the time we didn't talk much about basses.
What did you talk about, Geddy Lee?
Oh, other stuff.
Geddy, speaking of talking, Ben Mink has said that you speak fluent Yiddish?
Uh-huh.
How many other rock stars can do that? How many other rock stars can speak fluent Yiddish like Geddy Lee of Rush?
Well, aside from Ben Mink, I don't know too many others.
Because your voice really is truly amazing. However, Geddy, Rolling Stone Record Guide seems to think you have, quote, a voice like Donald Duck. What the hell is their problem?
I don't know. You have to ask them.
And speaking of your voice, Geddy, have you heard the Pavement song Stereo off their Brighten the Corners album that has that lyrics, you know, what about the voice of Geddy Lee? How did it get so high? I wonder if he speaks like an ordinary guy. I know him, and he does.
Right. I've heard about it. I haven't heard it myself.
What do you do when you hear a song like that? Do you feel like proud that you've installed these young punkers? Again, going back to the punk illusion there, Geddy, with these Feel of Rush. What do you feel about that when you hear a song like that?
I think it's amusing. I think in a weird way it's complimentary.
And Geddy Lee of Rush, have you seen the book Mondo Canuck It All by Jeff Pevere and Greg Diamond?
No, I haven't.
Because in it there they quote from Cream magazine in 1976 a Rick Johnson who writes, the first thing you notice about Rush is that they're not as gross looking as Bachman Turner Overdrive, and that they have a somewhat lower thud weight than most other Canadian bands. True enough, Canuck rockers do seem to have some sort of uglier-than-thou competition among themselves, along with a tendency to pounce on unsuspecting ears like a carnivorous dump truck. What is the deal on Cream magazine? Why did Americans think Canuck rockers are so ugly?
I have no idea. I guess when you're if you have to take that time period in consideration, and when you think of the bands that were successful from Canada, around that period, you're talking about the Guess Who and Bachman Turner Overdrive, and that's pretty much it. So it doesn't really paint a very pretty picture, does it?
No, but I was curious. How about female fans? Did you have many female fans at all, Geddy Lee?
Now?
Back then.
Back then, very few.
Yeah, because they sing you're ugly. Maybe that's what they were equating it with. But that's not true, because what's wild about you guys is, I would say your brand of rock, Rush's rock, is kind of geek rock in a way, and it also is thug rock. Because you have the geek rock, a lot of the kids are into Dungeons and Dragons, were into you guys, but also the thugs in the school, you know, the big tough guys were into that. Would you agree with that at all, Geddy Lee?
Well, I think our audience was mostly musicians. Whether you want to call them geeks or not is up to you, but there were a lot of musicians in the crowd, and we also seemed to appeal to people that were a little over-inebriated.
Geddy, the Canadian content on the Rush resume is amazing. I mean, you are the man. I was saying, you are God. You are Geddy Lee. You sang Take Off A to the Great White North. That's great to have that on your resume.
Well, it's amusing.
It's excellent. And you also had Count Floyd from SCTV, introduce a tune to Red Barchetta as one of your concerts. Well, didn't that happen? You had like Count Floyd introducing one of your songs?
Yeah, the song was The Weapon, I believe.
On a big video screen.
Yeah, he did a couple of intros for us.
Geddy Lee of Rush, what was it like being present for the recording of the greatest Canadian record of all time?
What was that?
Tears Are Not Enough!
Well, It was interesting. It was fairly comical to watch all these people being one by one brought to the mic and ordered around by David Foster. At the same time, it was a lot of fun to meet people like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, who are artists I've had a great respect for many years. But I would say it was a very odd pairing of human beings.
Well, just how annoying was David Blow-Dry Foster in the studio that fateful day in March 1985, Geddy Lee?
Well, I remember him asking Joni Mitchell to sing her line over and over again, and to everyone standing around, every performance was wonderful, and yet he insisted on making her sing it over and over again to most people's amazement. And then when Neil Young came in, he sang it once, and David Foster asked him to sing it again because it was a little out of tune, and Neil replied to him that that's his style and he's not going to do it again, to which a great swelling of pride welled up in all the onlookers.
Your line, "And you know that we'll be there," that's awesome. Did you have any trouble getting that off at all?
No, it was one take.
Did you get to talk to Canada's country gentleman Tommy Hunter at all at that?
No, I didn't.
And Geddy Lee of Rush, Terry Brown has produced like all your albums, like except the first one, and he worked on like Wild Thing by the Trogs and Substitute by the Who.
Oh, wait, he hasn't produced all our albums.
Well, like
he hasn't worked with us since 1981.
Oh, geez. Well, your brand new album, who produced that?
Peter Collins.
But I was shattered to learn, though, from Terry Brown, shattered to learn when he revealed that Tom Sawyer, Geddy Lee, is comprised of 3 different drum takes. 3 different drum takes for Tom Sawyer? Say it isn't so, Geddy.
I don't remember that, to be honest.
But
in those days, you're recording everything analog, and you're also playing as a band. So when you recorded, it wasn't just drums playing by themselves. It was bass, drums, guitar playing a bed track together. So the only technology available was to cut between different takes, which was quite normal in those days.
So does that mean there's edits in Tom Sawyer, Geddy Lee?
There very well could be.
Oh, no! Well, Terry Brown produced you guys, Geddy Lee. Who have been some of the other behind-the-scene characters in the Rush empire? Like, who have been your roadies? Are there any good Rush roadie stories at all?
Well, it's 25 years of stories. It's hard to pull one up on command.
But is there any truth to the rumor of Rush roadies accepting Ayn Rand books as bribes to get backstage to meet you guys?
I don't think so.
And Geddy, do you really believe all that Ayn Rand shit? I mean, come on, do you really believe all that, or is that Neil's thing?
Ayn Rand was someone who was very influential on Neil and myself, I would say almost 20 years ago. And yes, I think she had a lot to offer in terms of her theories on her artistic manifesto and her belief in individualism. So at some point in my life, she was a formative influence, but one of many, I would say.
Who would you say your favorite character in The Fountainhead is, Geddy Lee?
My favorite character in The Fountainhead?
Which one do you think, which character parallels your life the best, you think, in The Fountainhead?
None of them.
And Geddy Lee, Neil wrote all those Ayn Randy lyrics. Like, he, wrote all those Ayn Randy lyrics. He's pretty smart. Like, I saw him interviewing Prime Minister Jean Chrétien on Much Music a while back. Neil Peart versus Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
That's amazing. Neil Peart versus Jean Chrétien. And he had Chrétien totally on the hot seat.
Well, he's a smart guy. What can I tell you?
Did Maggie Trudeau come to any Rush gigs at all, Geddy Lee?
No.
Have you ever approached Keith Richards when he was wasted?
No.
Did you get to meet Keith Richards or any of the Beatles at all?
I met Ron Wood and Keith Richards once, very briefly, at a video shoot.
In Toronto?
Yeah.
Was it for a Rush video?
No, it was a Rolling Stone shoot.
And Geddy Lee, are you guys still into the drugs? Like in high school, Rush were the band to smoke dope to. And songs like Passage to Bangkok only made us want to get higher and higher.
Yeah, well, I don't smoke dope.
Geddy, what to you is real prog rock? ELP, Yes, Amandu, Can, Gentle Giant. What to you is real prog rock?
Well, prog rock, I'm afraid, is a dying or a outdated form of music. Nobody's really carrying the tradition on, but in its day, Van de Graaff Generator and at times Genesis, and yes, those bands were interesting to me.
What got you into prog rock? Were you into the Toronto 60s, seen it all? Did you ever see the Ugly Ducklings or the Poppers or the Mandela?
I saw all those bands, yeah.
So how does one get from...
Kensington Market.
Were you in any early bands? Did you ever share any bills with those in the early days of your first band?
No, I was still too young.
So how exactly, Geddy, does one get into prog rock? To go from the Ugly Ducklings to prog rock. What made you go prog? What made you get interested in that type of music?
I think it's musicians' music. I think as you form... my tastes were formed out of bands like The Cream and The Who, and those kind of rock bands. And as you get better as a player, those bands came along around that time. And that appeals to people that like to play. So, it's the only rock alternative that's viable that's not jazz, if you want to play something more complex.
Was there ever a Triumph versus Rush rivalry at all? Because Triumph were kind of like a bad Rush. Was there ever a Triumph versus Rush rivalry?
Not in my mind.
Because they put on a good light show, but they were no Max Webster, were they? I mean, Max Webster, that was the hit. That was it, eh?
That was a great band.
Were Max Webster kind of like a baby Rush?
No, they were completely their own personality, very different from us.
You actually sang a duet with Kim Mitchell on one of the Max Webster records, right?
Yeah, the whole band, both bands played together on one song.
Geddy Lee of Rush, what's the biggest thing you've ever had chucked at you on stage in Rush?
A shoe.
That was the biggest thing?
Yeah.
There's never, nobody's ever grabbed like a microwave or anything else bizarre and suddenly ended up like at your feet?
No missiles, no fridges, just a shoe. And believe me, when a shoe hits you in the head, it feels pretty darn big.
And Geddy Lee, if you were a dog, what breed would you be?
Next question.
And then you also like to add to the people out there at all, Geddy Lee?
No, thank you.
Why should people care about Rush?
I haven't got the foggiest idea.
Well, thanks for your time, Geddy. Keep on rocking in a free world, and doot-doodaloot-doo.
Okay.
Geddy Lee, doot-doodaloot-doo.
Goodbye.
No, Geddy Lee, doot-doodaloot-doo.
See ya.
No, Geddy, please, doot-doodaloot-doo.
See ya.
Please, Geddy, doot-doodaloot-doo. Geddy Lee of Rush? Geddy Lee of Rush? Doot-doodaloot-doo. Doot-doodaloot-doo.